Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at interfaces. So we're going to demonstrate how we can actually use interfaces in our programs. So what is an interface? Well, an interface is similar to an abstract class, except that it can only contain abstract methods and constants. Now the goal of an interface is to define how a class should behave. So the class can be written however it needs to be written, but it has to meet some specification on some behavior. So an interface is a way to define what behaviors a class should have, not how the class should be implemented to provide this behavior. So with that, that's probably enough. We can start doing some coding. So in Eclipse, I've created a new project called Interfaces, and to this we're going to add something new, but it's not going to be a class. Instead, it's going to be an interface. So we're going to call this interface editable. Now, because Eclipse has done this for us, I think it's worth a little bit of explanation. In Java, when we create interfaces, they look similar to classes, except we use the interface keyword instead of class. So we have public interface and then the name of our interface. Now what comes next inside this interface is we define a list of abstract methods that form our interface. So this particular interface is going to only have a single method. So public abstract string how to eat. Doesn't take any parameters and that's it. So that's our entire interface done. Now what this means is that any class that says, yes, I'm going to do something with this interface, has to implement this method, how to eat. So we're defining a whole bunch of classes that are editable, and then how to eat explains how we're going to eat them. This will make a lot more sense in just a second. So let's create a new class this time. So new class, and we'll call this test editable. Now, before we get actually write anything inside this class, let's create a couple of classes that use this interface. So the first thing we're going to have is a class called animal. And for now, we'll just leave this empty. We just want the class. So we've got a class here that is just for animals. Now, we want a specific type of animal, and we're going to make it a nice tasty one. So class chicken extends from animal, and we're going to say that chicken is edible. So I need to actually type chicken correctly. And the way we do this in Java is with the implements keyword. Now, this is probably worth a little bit of explanation. If we have a class hierarchy, we use the extends keyword, which means that chicken is an animal. When we're dealing with interfaces, we use the implements keyword, which means that chicken implements the methods that are defined in the editable interface. That's what that means. Now, the reason this is has a red cross here is because we haven't implemented the methods that were defined inside the interface. So let's do that right now. Public string how to eat, return chicken, and we're going to fry it because fried chicken is delicious. I apologize to any vegetarians out there that have to deal with this particular video. It's an example. So next we're going to have another class that extends from animal, and we'll call this one tiger. And here we won't put anything in here. It's not actually going to be put parentheses here where I didn't need them. Tiger we're not going to declare as edible. However, we're going to have another class called fruit that is going to be edible. Now, we want specific types of fruit. Just declaring fruit as edible doesn't really help us too much because there are so many different types. So that means that fruit is going to be an abstract class. So abstract class fruit implements edible. And this class is going to be empty. Now notice here that we didn't get the same compiler error as we did before we implemented the method in chicken. This is because we've said that fruit is abstract, which means that it doesn't necessarily have to implement the methods defined in this interface as long as the subclasses do. So now let's create a couple of subclasses. So class apple extends fruit. Now we don't have to have the implements edible here because apple is a subclass of fruit, which I spelt wrong. Apple is a subclass of fruit, and fruit already implements this interface. So we don't have to declare that again inside this subclass. We do, however, have to implement the method. So public string how to eat return apple, make apple cider. Okay, and finally we'll have one more. Class orange extends fruit, public string how to eat, and we're gonna say we're gonna make orange juice. So return orange, make orange juice. Okay, and that's enough now that we've got our class hierarchy of different animals, one of which is edible and tiger is not, and two different fruits both implement the edible interface. So now what we're going to do, in our test edible class, finally, we're going to have a main method. So public static void main string array args. Now what we're going to do quickly is declare an object array. And into this array, we're going to store a new tiger, a new chicken, and a new apple. Now, what we're going to do next is loop over this array. So for int I equals 0, I less than objects dot length, I plus plus. Now what we're going to do here is use a special keyword called instance of. So if objects at index I, instance of edible, system.out.println. Now, what we're going to do here is we're doing a check to see whether the object that we're up to in our array is an instance of edible. In other words, does this object, and we don't know the type of object yet because we are declaring it inside an object array. So if this object is an instance of edible, in other words, if it implements this interface, then we're going to print out how to eat it. Now the way we do this is first we need to typecast this into an edible, because at the moment all we have is an object. So objects at I. So now we have an object that implements edible. And now we can call the how to eat method. And there it is. So with that, if I could spell println correctly, we can run this and see what happens. So just remember, in our array we have a tiger, a chicken, and an apple. If we run this, we only get the output from chicken and apple, which I spelt the constructor, we spelt that wrong down here. So you can see we get the output from chicken, we fry it, and we have the output from apple, make apple cider, but we don't have any output from tiger. That is because tiger is not an instance of edible. It doesn't implement the interface. So we can do something like this as well. Actually, else system.out.println object is not edible. And now when we run it, we do get some output for tiger, but we say that it's not edible. So with that, that's really it for this video. So quickly to summarize, interfaces are created using the keyword interface in Java. Now, what an interface does is define the behavior that a class should implement if it wants to meet the interface. So classes implement the behavior specified in an interface, and we use the keyword implements to specify that a class provides this behavior. So remember, when we're writing our code, interfaces can only contain constants and abstract methods. So with that, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot.